Hi there, welcome to our Skybook webinar. My name is James Cartwright, I'm the Global Business Manager for Bytron Aviation Systems, and I'm also proud to be able to say that I'm one of our product specialists. Always on hand to help the operators, the customers we work with to realise the full potential in not only Skybook, but also our products and services. Now over the next hour or so, you'll be joining myself and Simon Clayton. Simon is our Chief Operating Officer at Bytron, at our Kirmington headquarters in the UK, as we take a look through Skybook, but more importantly, we focus on the problems and the challenges that we can help our customers to directly address. A number of you watching this will have seen what we've done in recent years. This year we decided that we wanted to shake things up a little bit, give Ed and the team at Aircraft IT the cold sweats while we look at something different. So what are we going to do? We're going to focus on the problems, the challenges that we encounter every day of the week when talking to our customers. I'm going to show you how our modules ultimately help to alleviate those. That way, hopefully we'll give you a sense of how strong our offering is and why we've got so many customers around the world making the switch to Skybook. Now, Skybook is a very comprehensive solution, so 45 minutes is going to be a real stretch for us to be able to cover everything. So with that in mind, what we aim to do is leave you with a strong sense of what we can achieve together, and also with a desire for you to get in touch with us after this and find out more. So if you want to arrange a private demonstration, simply email us via the link that will hopefully have just popped up on the screen for you there, and we'll get in contact outside of this session and arrange something accordingly. So first and most importantly, this is an interactive session. You can pose questions throughout it. To do so, you'll notice that there is a question box towards the bottom right of the screen. Just type your question in there and submit it. We'll be able to pick it up in real time. Should you experience any issues whilst watching the session, any buffering or slowing down, simply refresh your browser, which should address them for you. Now, as we've already mentioned, we will be covering a lot of ground in today's webinar, and we can only answer so many questions in the time that we've got at the end. So if for any reason we don't get around to answering your question, please rest assured we will follow this up with you outside of the session. Now, during the webinar, we're going to be using a typical flight dispatch workflow to highlight some of the most common challenges and problems faced by operators. Now, this doesn't matter what sector of aviation you're in. You know, we cater for all aspects, so we've got experience of what you're facing on a day-to-day basis. We will then be discussing these challenges in more detail and directly looking at how our Skybook modules can be used to address them. We'll be showing you how we can directly tackle the problems that you'll be facing in order to drive improvements across flight dispatch, flight deck, and flight operations as a bare minimum. Now, before we start on the wider session, before we get into today's agenda properly, let's just go back to basics and make sure we're all on the same page where Skybook is concerned. So Skybook is a SaaS-based product, okay? Consists of a web application portal, which is our ground portal, if you like. And this is for operations teams, dispatch teams, flight followers, based within airlines or operators of any discipline. And then we've got the Skybook EFB, which is our tablet application that's available for iOS, Android, or can also be taken via Windows devices. Currently in use with operators around the world, in fact with over 90 different operators around the world. And that's thanks to the flexible way in which we can fully configure Skybook to meet even the most stringent of needs from any operator. Now, as a solution, Skybook is proven to help improve communication across departments. It brings teams together through collective ownership and access. It's proven to increase situational awareness on a global basis. It doesn't matter where you are, everyone's got consistent information. And in doing so, it improves safety and helps make faster decisions with more information to hand. Helps to reduce workloads and improve workflows. Create connected solutions through integration. It will automate previously labour-intensive jobs, and above all else, it will help to improve on-time performance and will also play a leading role in helping you to understand areas that can be improved to hit your emissions targets. Now that was very quick. Obviously, we're going to go through this in far more detail, and you can get a lot more information about Skybook on our website. But that helps us to make sure we're all on the same page before we get into the main agenda. You know, flexibility is the key to Skybook. And when I say that, I mean flexibility through automation of key processes, through integration with third-party systems, flexibility of configuration, and above all else, flexibility through the range of modules that operators can ultimately choose from to create the most effective version of Skybook for themselves. Now, I've talked enough on my own right now. I'm starting to get a bit lonely. So I'll not delve any deeper into our products at this stage. Instead, what we're going to start to focus on is the main purpose of this webinar. So we've given you a sense of what we're going to be looking through today. The most important thing for me to do right now is introduce Simon Clayton. Simon is our Chief Operating Officer for Bytron, having been here literally man and boy. He's got a lot of experience, and he's the perfect commander to my first officer for the rest of the session as we start to get into a bit more detail. So let's start by taking a look at how we offer a range of seamless integrations, and in doing so, what problems are we helping airlines to ultimately address. So just explain a little bit about why we're different as a company and how we ultimately approach integrating products.
I think one of the big differentiators with Skybook and Bytron as a company is we've been around a long time. We've taken on a lot of integrations over the years, and Skybook itself has been around for 21 years now. And so we take a holistic approach to integration. It's the major factor that differentiates us from all our competitors. So the way we look at it, we actually split it into three different groups of things. Obviously there's inputs. What can Skybook take into the system to make the airlines' life easier? So that's dispatchers and pilots. What we can do with that data, as in making life easier for pilots and dispatchers. And finally, what can we do for the airline in general with the data that's collected by Skybook? So to expand on that a bit more, simple things that we'll do is take in the flight schedule and the crew roster. We can take that in from different third-party suppliers. It could be AIMS, it could be Blue One, it could be Sabre. You name it, we've probably done the integration for it. And on top of that, we then build on top of the flight plan, so the OFP. And again, we take that from lots of different providers. You could say we're agnostic, so Jeppesen, so we'll take it from Jet Planner, now Blue, Sabre, PPS, flight keys. So anyone you can name, we've dealt with in the past, and we can take that data in and do something useful within Skybook with it. And I'll go on to that in more detail in a moment. And other things that we've added on over the lifetime of Skybook is things like taking in documents, so things like the load sheet, the NOTOX, airfield briefings, and again, seamlessly integrated. And the way you can integrate that data into Skybook is various different ways. We start off originally with SFTP, a really well-known method of transferring data between systems. We've added onto that our own API, which customers now use to supply data to us. And also the industry standard IBM MQ, which a lot of airlines are now adopting to give seamless integration between systems. Other integrations we've done in the past few years, MEL. So MEL's become a big thing. So the minimum equipment list on the flight deck. We integrate with lots of different systems to get MEL data, such as AMOS. And then there's the obvious ones that all EFB providers do. All of the aviation data like weather, NOTAM, and charts. One thing that we've added in the last 18 months or so is the ability to take EFF packages in from other suppliers. So although Skybook generates EFF packages, we can actually take your fuel provider's EFF package and take data out of that. So if you prefer to use, say, for example, Jeppesen's weather and NOTAM data from their EFF package, Skybook can take that, add all the other information to it that Skybook integrates, and then supply that amalgamated version of the EFF out to the pilot. So it has added value on top of what the fuel and nav provider can provide. And so once we've collated all that information, then there's obvious things that we want to do with that. Dispatchers want to be able to look at the data. They want route-specific information. So the weather and NOTAM is all route-specific. They want to be able to review the data before they then release it to the crew. So our ground portal allows us to do that, or allows the customer to do that before releasing the package out to the EFB. So EFB wise, obviously the skybook application or EFB, which we'll show you later on, where we can deliver data to, and there's benefits to using our app over other EFBs. We can also deliver our EFF packages to any third-party EFB that supports ARINC 633.
So this isn't just about our sales pitch, if you like, to get everyone that's watching to contemplate adopting this whole Skybook suite. This is about broadening people's minds to the possibilities of, we've got some really cost-effective ways of being able to help make significant improvements based around what you're currently using, but utilising some of the more powerful elements of Skybook to literally plug into the middle and manage it all.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. We don't see ourselves as just providing our systems to you. We enable you to use whatever systems you want and provide it in a holistic way that makes everybody's lives easier. So rather than you having to go around and integrating everything yourself, you can choose the best of the applications that you want, the best EFB if you don't think it's Skybook, the best provider of fuel and nav planning and schedule, and we'll integrate that all together into a coherent package.
I mean, let's face it, if you didn't think it was the most effective EFB out there in terms of Skybook, you would be foolish, but everyone's welcome to review accordingly. So I guess another question then, brilliant getting all of this data in and being able to make it usable within a product like Skybook, but what about how we ultimately then extract it from Skybook and give it back to the operator post-flight?
Yeah, so again, over our experience over the last 6 or 7 years with the latest versions of EFB technology, airlines have become more used to using the data that comes back from the pilots. So obviously, traditionally, they used the paper in the envelope, and that took a long time to process. But now airlines are all cottoned on to the fact that actually this data is valuable and powerful, and they want it back as quick as possible. And so we can provide that data out to the customer in various different ways. We can send it out as JSON data, as XML data directly into their systems. And we have our own reports and analytics module where you can visualize the data yourself within Skybook. And obviously you can use that data within different departments. You might want, receipts going off to the finance department. You might want to look at your de-icing activity. You might want to look at your actual fuel burn against planned. And so Skybook enables all that. We also have an API that allows you to trigger events in your existing operations system. So every time a pilot downloads an EFF package, signs an EFF package, closes one off, we can trigger events into your ops system as well. So all systems on the ground can be integrated as well. Simon
makes a really good point there in relation to what we can do with our APIs to create fully digital workflows within Skybook that will help to replace what could have been 2 or 3 people involved in printing documentation, running to the flight deck with it, getting the captain to sign off on it 5 minutes before pushback, then taking that paperwork back to the office, for instance. You know, these are just some examples of the number of different ways that we can utilise the integrated data there. So we'll now take a look at the next section. Where we're going to be moving forward now and effectively following the data through Skybook. So keep in your minds the fact that we've now done the integration element, we've got the data into Skybook. Let's start taking a look at it from a flight dispatcher's or ops team or flight tracker's perspective and see where we go next. The next big challenge that we face on a regular basis and we see a lot of operators experiencing is this disparate number of systems that they have to use in order to try and piece together all of the information needed for their flights. So that might not be something that needs to be integrated, but certainly having to review NOTAMs over here, METAR and TAF over here, flight documentation from another place, that's not helpful. It's not a good use of time. So how does Skybook, if we were to look at this from the point of a dispatch team, for example, how can Skybook ultimately be used in a way that helps operators to maybe get rid of some of these excess subscriptions and manage that information and that status?
Yeah, it's a good question, James, and I can show you through a short demonstration. So on the screen now, you can see Skybook's dispatch monitor. So this monitor allows a dispatcher to look at all of the flights that Skybook currently knows about. So whether they're from the schedule, so from Ames or Blue One or Sabre, And then it will overlay it with the OFP as the OFP is released, or the fuel plan's released from flight planning. We'll bring that in and we'll get the latest information, so like the estimates for the flight, the actual flight route. And so you can see there's various types of information on here. We know the day of the flight, the status, and we'll come back to the status in a moment, because these are quite important because they tell you the workflow. From the pilot's point of view, so the dispatcher knows where the pilot's at in regards to the EFF package. There's more status information. So these have all come from OFPs, so from the flight plan. The dispatcher can confirm the flight plan number with the pilot. It's very important that when they're talking to one another or communicating, that they're talking about the same flight plan. And so Skybook brings that flight plan number in. Obvious things like the registration of the aircraft and departure and destination. So things you typically see on a normal ops board. But what Skybook also allows you to do is look at everything that's been integrated or supplied into that flight.
Okay.
So we spoke in the first section about bringing in things like load sheets and note talks. And you can see on this particular flight that these are already loaded in.
Yeah.
So Skybook's identified them as a load sheet, as a note talk. And the dispatcher's actually added a general notice to the flight as well. So as a dispatcher, you may want to get something out like an airfield brief or some safety information, and the dispatcher can manually add that into the flight. So it's quite easy for the dispatcher to review that documentation and then make sure everything's there that's required.
Yeah.
And similarly, there's other methods of getting information out there as well. You might want to send an instant message. So to our Skybook app, there's a two-way instant message chat function. So you don't have to get on the radio. You can do it via text chat.
So with that being real time, does that trigger some form of pop-up or notification in the app itself?
Yeah, so on the EFB, it'll be right in the pilot's face that there's a dispatcher's trying to get hold of you. Sector messages. So sector messages are dead simple text messages. These pop up right at the start on Skybook as the pilot logs into the app. Yeah. So it'll be quick things like remember to do this, or things that don't warrant a big document or a PDF document. You can get quick messages out.
A little bit read and sign.
Yeah, read and sign. So can you read this? Can you acknowledge you've read it? Other things that the dispatcher can do is look at the departure and destination weather. So very important. They want to make sure the weather's good. So here you can see straight away we have the METAR and the TAF. But Skybook splits it down, and you'll see these colour codes throughout the system. So the colour code is showing the dispatcher by the minimum that's set within Skybook by the airline, the weather's fine. There's nothing to look at there.
So that's not generic information, then that's specific to the airline.
That's specific to the airline. So they set those minimas up based on their operations. Yeah. And their defined minima, and Skybook reflects that in a traffic light system. So we'll see green, amber, and red. You can also look at TAF trends. So you can look at all of the TAFs that are being received over a period of time. Okay, so as we go down the data for the destination airfield, we can see now that there's a NOTAM colour coded in red. Yeah. And this is another way of highlighting to the dispatcher that there's an issue that they should be aware of. So in this case, the system's been set up to show that runway close is an issue that they should do something about. And the airline can set up any of this criteria themselves. So it's not Skybook dictating runway close is one that should be highlighted. It's the airline who set those up.
Okay, so we actually do come on to cover this off in terms of situational awareness a little bit further on in the session. So we'll not labour it now. But I guess the next question is, so we've looked at that from a dispatcher's perspective, and hopefully the audience get a strong sense of how Skybook uses the data to automate tracking key status updates and also showing where there are emerging issues. But what about being able to give an operator a more holistic overview of what's going on so they can see flight times, for example, not just the static information?
Yeah, so Skybook also has an ops board module. So the ops board is a traditional ops board, as you've seen in an ops room in an airline. So you've got all of your aircraft down the left-hand side in the sectors that they're flying. Mm-hmm. So what we've done deliberately just for this demo is set up a clash of sectors down here. So you can see that if there's we get an estimate in, that's or a delay comes in from the EFB or from any other source, then you can see the impact on any subsequent sector. So this is our current timeline, or the current time now. This is the sector that's flying, and we can see because of a delay, it's going to knock into the sector later on. One thing to say is that all of the actions that are available in dispatch are also available through the ops board. So everything we've seen in dispatch is available here as well. So
at the touch of a button there, I mean, that was, my maths isn't amazing, but that was one click. And again, you're straight back into that broader flight menu.
Yeah, and one thing that we didn't touch on in dispatch was, we did briefly, was the status of the flight. And you can see on this panel the current status of the EFF package. So we can see that this particular flight, the OFP has been uploaded, but the pilot hasn't touched it yet.
Okay.
And so there's this status information. The dispatcher always knows what stage that EFF package is at throughout its journey.
So I guess two questions immediately spring to mind then. The first one being, if like a lot of airlines do, they've got predetermined processes, they've got a number of things that need to happen in set periods of time for the flights to ultimately get away on time. Can that type of workflow be built into skybook? So if I don't download my briefing package by X time, it's going to be telling someone in the system automatically.
Absolutely, and these icons that you're seeing in the centre of these blocks is telling you the current status. So if we get within, say, minus 1 hour of STD and the pilot hasn't downloaded, that icon will change. A notification will always will appear. You may have seen some appearing down in the bottom right, which will be telling the dispatcher. And we can also email people as well. So you could even email the pilot and say, "Oi, why have you downloaded your flight package?"
So in reality, I don't even need to be logged into Skybook to know that I've not done something, or that there is something going on.
Absolutely.
And is that the same? I guess another common thing, flight plan changes.
Yeah. So flight plan changes. Obviously critical, because you want to know that the pilot's got exactly the same information as the flight planner and the dispatcher. So what Scout will do, and unfortunately in the demo we haven't set this up, but next to the flight plan there'll be a red triangle and a notification appear to tell the dispatcher that an OFP has changed or a new updated OFP has been received. The dispatcher then accepts or rejects that OFP, and as soon as he does that, that then gets triggered out to the EFB for the pilot to tell them that there's a new OFP.
So again, notification pops up in the app. Pilot knows to do something, 2 clicks, latest information, and I guess it refreshes the weather in no time.
Yeah, so if he's going on a totally different route, then
no need to print off another 80-page briefing package, leg it to the flight deck, quickly hand it over.
No, all gone.
Brilliant. Well, that seems like a great point to move on to the next section. Improving flight safety. So as I say, a bold statement, not something that's easy to quantify at times. No one can say we've prevented X from happening so far this many times today. But in reality, what we're going to show you will hopefully quantify just how far you can go within Skybook, not only to generate the type of information you need to make sure your pilots fly safely, and your ops and dispatch teams have got the information they need to spot problems early, but also how far we can ultimately go to tailor all of this information specific to each operator. So just to set the scene a little bit, within Skybook, as part of the Skybook package, you get all of your weather and all of your no time information included. You get all of your charts included. Our weather comes directly from the UK Met Office. Our no time information comes directly from Eurocontrol. And what Simon's now going to do is explain what we do with that information to make sure that when an airline or an operator sees a critical status update, they know that it's specific to their safe operating limits. So yeah, Simon, I guess over to you. How do we do it? We've got over 90 operators using Skybook.
Yeah.
How the hell do we give them the ability to have custom information?
Okay, so we've got a number of tools at the disposal for an airline to actually tailor their briefings for the crews and how they want to operate. One of the major tools that we've got is allowing the airline to set their operational minima for each of the airfields that they're flying to. So as you can see on the screen now, we can set things, minima, for ceiling visibility, RVR, wind speed and wind gust. And we've already seen where these colour codes are appearing when we're looking at dispatch. So for the dispatcher, say for example, the cloud ceiling was lower than 1475.
Yeah.
Then the METAR would be showing red, similar for the TAF. And it's that simple really. You set the ranges up, and then Skybook does the rest.
Okay.
And we can do that for various different things. So this is a general setting. So for any airfield that we haven't categorised in any other way, Skybook will apply these defaults. But what we can actually do is categorise airfields into groups A, B, and C,
Right.
and they can all have different minima.
Yeah.
So you may be flying into Kathmandu, and in fact with Kathmandu we have a lot of airlines put specific minimum of Kathmandu because it's very difficult to land at, and so you've got all that flexibility built into Skybook. And we'll see that in a moment, how that reflects on the EFB as well.
Mm.
But one of the other things I wanted to share was how we deal with NOTAM data. So NOTAMs are the pain of everybody's life, but not with Skybook. Skybook makes NOTAM handling really, really straightforward. For one thing, we can actually exclude NOTAMs. So there'll be places where every airline knows, well, I don't want to see those NOTAMs.
Yeah.
Pilots never want to see them. There could be things like grass cutting or kite flying, or it might be a particular state or country who send out a whole block of NOTAMs, which are just admin NOTAMs.
Yeah.
Well, this function allows you to exclude those. And you can see examples here, so we can exclude a particular service from a particular country or set of FIRs, particular Q codes.
Yeah.
And so you've got full flexibility.
So that stops it from coming anywhere near Skybook, stops it coming into the briefings.
Into the briefings, the NOTAMs are still accessible within the ground portal.
Okay.
So if somebody's interested in looking at every NOTAM, you can still get them. But the pilots know they've never seen them.
And what if an airline needs to be able to demonstrate from a regulatory point of view what they've excluded? Can we still show what's been removed, for instance?
Absolutely. Well, there's two ways. Obviously, one is through this particular module.
Yeah.
Within the paper PDF, it lets show exclusions.
Okay.
And similarly within the EFB as well. The other thing, and again, we touched on it when we were looking at dispatch, we saw a NOTAM that was highlighted in red because it was runway closed. This is how you do that. So for every Q code in a NOTAM, you can set whether it's critical, goes red.
Yeah.
Whether it's warning, goes amber. And if it's not in this list, it won't colour code it out.
Okay.
So it's really simple. And as you can see, there's examples here, like ILS is critical if it's off. Really simple and straightforward. Set it once and forget it. Just do it as an admin function. And then probably even more powerful than that are the email rules. We have a lot of airlines, or most airlines, monitor NOTAMs as they come in because they're looking things for like aerodrome closed, runway closed, thresholds being shortened, and because they need to action those. And it was a real pain for people to do that on a shift pattern. You have people on shift. No more. With Skybook, you can set it up to watch for particular NOTAMs coming in, and it can be emailed to somebody or to something.
Yeah.
And I saw one powerful example where an airline that we demoed this to set up within 2 minutes a NOTAM to come in via Skybook, match your role, and go into a task system of theirs for a dispatcher just to pick up and do something with it. It was that seamless.
Yeah.
So that's from the ground. So what we can do then is look at how that's reflected in Skybook itself. Okay, so we've just looked at the ground portal, how you set up minimas and how dispatchers can see the colour codes for weather and NOTAM. Now we're going to look at what the pilot actually sees.
Yeah.
So once the pilot's downloaded his package into the EFB, there are multiple ways they can then visualise that. One is through the map as we see on the screen now, where you have the route of the flight, all the airfields along the route that the Skybook has picked out as being required for this particular flight. And you can see, if we hone in on these, a circle that shows 2 colour codes.
Yeah.
The top circle is the weather status, based on the minimum that we've just seen being set. The bottom is the NOTAM colour.
Okay.
So we can see on this particular airfield, I can click on that as a pilot and go straight to the information that's under there. So that's Cork. And so we can see here we've got, well, we haven't even touched on this, rain. So straight away we can see we have rain outages. Straight in the pilot's face, they can see that that's a potential issue. We go down, we can look at the weather data. So the METAR and the TAF. And we can look at the NOTAM data.
Yeah.
And you can see.
So I can filter out the white noise, so to speak, and just focus on the critical.
Yeah, so I just clicked on critical, and now we can see runway closed.
Yeah. So you've just scrolled down a little bit there. I'm quite lazy when I'm looking at stuff like this. What if I just wanted to jump straight back to the top and look at the meta again?
So what you can do is basically click on the quick links, and it takes you straight back to the top. Really simple. And so that shows you how those settings that we did on the ground portal are reflected into the EFB.
Yeah.
And those settings reflect into everybody's EFB. So everybody's using the same company standard. They always know when they load a skybook briefing why things are shown in the colour that are shown. And there'll be none of the rubbish NOTAMs that the pilots want, so they've all been reduced down. That's a safety issue. They're not having to trawl through hundreds and hundreds of NOTAMs. They could miss critical ones. And Skybook is highlighting all of those.
So I guess the question is, having seen what we can do with all of this information from a ground portal perspective, how do we make use of it for the pilots? How do we make it flight deck friendly? And what do they do in terms of, or how does it benefit them, I guess, when it comes to getting that information out of the app as well?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and one hopefully I can answer. So we're not going to go into a full demonstration. It's just way too long. So what I want to do is just give you a brief outline of how Skybook deals with the data, what it delivers, and what we can potentially give back to the airline as a benefit based on the pilot data coming back. So we can see down the bottom of the EFB various major modules, or major functions. We have briefing, plog, voyage, eventually tech log, but this is just teaser, and library. And so plog and voyage are the main ones where the pilots interact now. So it takes the place of the paper-based OFB and the journey log. So currently we're in our departure module, and one thing to remember while you're looking at this is that all of these forms and modules are tailorable. We've configured them in multiple ways for different airlines who want to operate in different ways. So just to give you an idea, we have a fuel calculation, and you can see here that we're actually bringing the planned figure in from the OFB. Okay. So you see one touch point now with the OFB. The other major touch points obviously are from the briefing that we've looked at previously, where we're looking at the flight and the waypoints. Anywhere where you see a red asterisk is mandatory, and again, you can decide whether things are mandatory. And there's lots of different things, so you can record baggage if you want to, number of passengers if you want to. Again, these can be integrations if you've got those kind of systems. And so this is all pre-departure. And so we're not going to go into every single thing, but you can record things by scribbles, by typing, by taking camera images, all these kind of things that people want to do to record data. You can do that within Skybook. Pre-departure signatures. So obviously one of the major functions before you pilot departure is you want them to sign off. Okay. So sign off on fuel, sign off on receipt of the OFP, and we can see that we can do this here. You may want to record things like pilot taking off, etc., for statistical purposes as well. So that's the departure module. As I say, we're going to fly through this. The en route module, this takes the place of the traditional paper OFP, so where the pilot will be putting their actual figures in and monitoring the flight. So we can see along here we have all of the waypoints along the route. We show a condensed version initially, so you just get the highlights, things like the ETA, planned fuel on board at point, and planned flight level. But you can expand this to see all the underlying things like MSA and wind speeds and things as well. It's quite easy for the pilot to interact. They can use the buttons on the side to enter things like actuals. So they can put those in there, and that will be recorded. Yeah. And again, that's a really good touch point. You've got the planned data now and the actual data, and that's available within the ground, or will be available in the ground portal. They can do things like route direct, enter frequencies, squawks, and everything they've normally recorded would be in there. And then the arrival. So arrival, you record ATIS and clearance, as you'd expect to be able to do. And again, things like landing pilot for statistical analysis as well. And again, fully configurable. Arrival fuel, calculation of fuel used, all done automatically by Skybook. So moving on to the main journey log, or the voyage report inside, you can see down the left-hand side now the types of things we record for the journey log. So I've pre-populated some crew in, so we could be taking that from the crew roster, or it could be manually entered by dispatchers, or it could be added in by the commander. So if there's a late change and you need to swap somebody in or out, that can be done by the commander on the flight deck. Similarly for ground services, You can record any kind of ground services that you use. So in this case, I've added one bus was used, but it may be things like jetways, APU, GPU, whatever you want the commander to record, you can do that.
Yeah. You
can even go far as down as putting suppliers in and working out whether they're meeting SLAs. Another great benefit of Skybook if you want to use it. De-icing, again, record I've already put in, pre-canned, but all the things that you would expect to put in, area of the aircraft, fluid types, fluid mix are all in there, and holdover times.
And you mentioned that these were configurable, so I think it's just worth picking up on the fact that think back to the start of the session, talked about flexibility, and these are great examples. This is why we have customers across all sectors of aviation able to use effectively one off-the-shelf version, because quite simply we can remove anything that's surplus to requirements and create a data flow, if you like, or a recording area that best suits each operator. Not everyone wants the same thing.
No, it's a very good point, and obviously the demo system shows everything.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of customers pair it right back. So all of the other forms that we're seeing here, the delays, commander's report, all follow the same methodology. So we'll move swiftly on. One of the latest modules that's just come out of Skybook is our form builder module. This is an amazing module. It basically allows the airline to capture any form. So rather than just relying on Skybook's inbuilt forms, on the ground you can have an administrator create a form template and have that delivered to the EFB or indeed to somebody on the ground. Mm-hmm. So if we click on Forms, My Forms, we can see a list of forms that are being configured by somebody on the ground. I'll click on Air Safety Report and you can see here a representation of an air safety report.
Yeah.
Not built into Skybook, not coded by a developer. It was actually created with an easy tool on the ground and delivered to the EFB.
And it literally is an easy tool. I mean, it's drag and drop. You know, you are effectively telling Skybook how many columns you want, what needs to go in those columns. You know, are you going to use the smart form aspect, which means that a certain amount of the form will be pre-populated using information from the OFP, for instance. So hugely effective. But I think one of my favourite elements is for those regulatory forms that there is no tolerance on in terms of they have to look identical to the version that the regulator gives you. We can create those in an identical format that makes it easy for the pilots to fill in and keeps the regulators very happy there, all via that single module.
And the great thing about it is obviously when you get this digital version of this air safety report to the ground, it can then be distributed to whoever you want. You're not waiting for a paper form to come back and somebody to photocopy it, somebody to put it into a system. It can be emailed to somebody directly, it can be sent to somebody's terminal to review, and it can be distributed to the regulator, if so be it, straight away, directly. And that's the beauty and the power of it.
Okay, so my challenge now is, we've spoiled the flight deck, we've given them a far more concise, far more time efficient and easier way of being able to log their actuals. How do we get it out of the app and into Skybook?
Okay, so when the crew have completed their flight, they effectively sign it off. So within the voyage report, you can see there's a sign off. That's the commander signing off the whole voyage, whether that's one sector or multiple sectors.
And is that done with a code? Is it scribble pad? Is it
either or?
Okay.
So there's multiple ways. Different airlines want to do it in different ways, and different regulators want to do it in different ways. So we cater for it all. Well, what happens is that data is sent to the ground. So all of the actual data entered by the pilot, whether it's a picture taken by a camera, whether it's an input into a form, if it's a scribbled signature, all downloaded securely to the Skybook record.
Okay.
And so we can quickly have a look at the record vault. So the thing about the record vault is that every airline needs to keep all of their flight data for at least 90 days. It's just a requirement, a statutory requirement. So Skybook does that by default, 90 days, but actually you can keep it as long as you want. We have no set limit. And what this record vault holds is a record of all the planned data that's been received. So that's all the integration data we talked about right at the start.
Yeah.
So the schedule, the roster, the OFPs, load sheets, no tops, absolutely everything. Weather data, no time data, charts. But it also records all of the information returned from the crew. So very quickly, one thing you can do, obviously we have this as a digital data set, but also we record a PDF version of it as well. So it's human readable.
Okay.
Imagine giving a regulator an XML packet or a JSON packet, they'd be really happy. But we actually create a fully tailored PDF so it's easily readable by anybody who needs to audit it. But obviously you can also look at the information digitally as well through the Skybook ground portal. So here we have one flight that was flown quite a while ago, back in September. We can see all the audited times, when it was uploaded, when it was downloaded, when the set was accepted. We can look at crew, we can look at fuel, and all of these are all the data coming back from the EFB. So we can look at the fuel that was on board, the target fuel, the fuel after the refuel.
Mm-hmm.
It's all there. All our departure information recorded by the crew, our UI times. So obviously UI times are very important for OTP. And Skybook has an inbuilt reporting dashboard which deals with OTP, and so on. And so we've recorded all this information, and any of this information can be supplied to other airline systems. So if you've got a statistical or reporting system, we can supply it there. We have a couple of customers who have written their own dashboards, push this data into operation systems like AIMS as well.
Yeah. So effectively, I mean, if you think about where we started this session, where we were talking about our ability to integrate information to get it into Skybook, in effect, as operators looking to make the most of any system that they implement, we've got the ability to help them pre, during, and post-flight to really drive those efficiencies, I guess, and make data more accessible at a time where everyone's trying to do more potentially with and for less. So I think, just to recap, that was a whistle-stop tour. Thank you for taking time out to have a look at it. Hopefully, we've given you plenty of food for thought. We've had a look at, what is Skybook in general terms. We've had a look at how we can integrate the services we provide and how you don't even need to use Skybook to make the most of those services. In some senses, we've looked at how we can centralize the management of flight data, stop you from having multiple subscriptions, stop your teams having to jump across multiple platforms. How do we improve flight safety? Why our app is rapidly becoming the pilot's choice, and ultimately, at the end of that, is your data. So what we can do to get it out of Skybook post-flight. So before Simon and I jump off to go and audition for QVC, the shopping channel, and ultimately then join you again in a few moments for the live Q&A aspect. Again, please don't hesitate to email us if you want to arrange a more in-depth overview with our team of experts. Otherwise, thank you for your time, and we'll see you shortly.